y'all hear me? Good. Okay. So first of all, a couple quick notes. Just make sure that those doors are closed. Make sure the doors are closed. First of all, someone had a Piazza question. Why did these CSS disappear when we used .send versus .render? So to answer that, let's look at the Express documentation. And res.send. There we go. All right, so if we read through this, what you'll realize is whenever you send a string object, as we did, let's see, res.send, and then some string, right? When you send a string, all it does is just send that string as a response, right? Previously, what render does is it actually sends HTML, right? So it'll say like P express -P, right? But the problem is when you don't send HTML and you just send a string back, there's no HTML to apply the CSS to, right? So that's why the CSS was still accessible by our app, but it wasn't applied to anything that was returned whenever we send a string instead of HTML. Okay. Second, a quick note: milestone 0. Yeah, milestone 0 is due tonight at midnight. Make sure to get that in on time. And finally, a quick question to gauge understanding or comprehension. Do we use jQuery on the server side? Do we use jQuery with Node? How many people think yes? How many people think no? All right, perfect. And someone tell me why. In a quick 1 or 2 lines. Why? Well, I'll tell you. So, as y'all assume that you guessed, it's because jQuery is for manipulating the DOM, which only appears on the client side. So there's no need for using it on the server side. Okay, cool. So let's see. Okay, so go to this link to get the workshop. But we're going to do things together for the first half of this hour block. So, back. All right, so this is going to bring you to this page, and part 1 is what we did earlier. So for part 2, we're going to go ahead and go to the NodeJS starter code, starter repo, and follow along for this part. If you get stuck, feel free to ask a question, or people can come around and help. Worst case, we can come help you once we start everybody else off. But okay, so to clone, we clone or download, and then we grab this. This is a this is .git, a .git link, versus this up here is .com. So I'm going to remove everything that we have in the temp directories. Oof. That's scary. Okay. And I'm going to git clone and then the already this. Again. Alright, there we go. So now we have NodeJS starter right here. So we'll cd into NodeJS starter and we'll see what we have. Okay, so this is like actually pretty similar, right, to what we had in our Express generated app. We have a README, we have app.js, bin, package.json, public routes and views. The README is what creates this on the GitHub page, right? And so this is written in Markdown. That's how you create the different like sizes and things like that. But that's what this is. Okay. And there's a couple of other files like base.css and whatnot, but pretty much the same. ngit.git.gitignore. .git is what handles all of the Git information, such as like history and commits and branches and things like that, and stuff like that. .gitignore is telling Git extra things that it should ignore in terms of recording source code history. So, alright, here. So first let's just run this. And run start. Okay, so we've run into a scary looking issue. Someone tell me what just happened. Right. There's a bunch of things that aren't installed because in package.json we have this list of things that we need installed, right? And we don't have a node modules directory, so we have nothing installed, right? So whenever you download an npm package, the first thing that you generally want to do is npm install. Okay, so this, right, is our list. The first tier, the first level, is all of our dependencies. So body parser, cookie parser, express, things like this. And this is just showing you the full tree of packages that you just installed with npm install. Again, not super important, but that's just what this message is. So now we can do npm run start, and remember this is just running the start script in package.json. This script right here. And it's already in use. So, okay, well this actually works out. So if you get this type of message, port 3000 is already in use, that probably means you have another instance of Node running a web app somewhere else. So in my case, right here, I have the default Express app running. So I'm going to clear out of that. And do npm run start. And this is just saying I'm going to allow the connection to be made. Not that important. But okay, so now if we go back to localhost :3000. All right, cool. We have we have a default. Well, not a default. We have the web app running. This is the project that we just downloaded from the Node.js starter repo. And as we can see, we've got a sign-up form with a username and that user's favorite fruit. You can also delete a user, and then you can find a user, but that's unimplemented. If we want to see the list of users that we have, we can hit list of users, and it'll show you a JSON object of names and as keys, and their favorite fruit name, their favorite fruit as the value. Okay, the other issue is this isn't implemented, and this is also not implemented. So these forms, the scaffolding, the HTML has been built, and the CSS has been applied, but the functionality of the form, it doesn't exist. This form, not even the scaffolding has been built. Okay. So what we're going to do first is we're just going to print a message to this console whenever we load the root page. Because right now, okay, so let's go over what we're seeing here. First of all, this is just showing you what happened when you started the app. Ran node./bin/www. Okay, let's clear this out and go back. So this is just saying these are all of the requests that happened that your web app received when I tried to access the root page, right? So first of all, get slash is me getting the root page, right? And then 200, I think, means it was a successful get. And then this is how long it took. I don't really know what this is. But then, because this page by itself is just the HTML. But if we look at views and then index, which is this page, right? There's actually a lot of stuff in here. There's a link to other things like style sheets, right? Or this external JavaScript library. So that's what. That's what this is. It's because in our HTML for this page, it's saying, hey, I want to also get the style sheet at this location, or get the style sheet at this location. Let's do this. Right, see link relation style sheet href slash style sheets slash base slash style sheets slash base. So that's what this is happening. What's happening here? Okay, and get image slash images slash background. That's this background image right here. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is print another message here whenever we go to this page. So what we're going to do is let's find a good place to actually do this. Well, whenever we go to the root route, right, like to just slash, we're visiting a route, so let's look at that. Let's look at routes slash index. And we see getting the home page right here, right? Router.get the root path, the root route. And then this is what's happening when we go here. But let's see what happens if we do console.log. Okay, let's try this. Restart, run, clear. And okay, we see that because the app received the request at the root, this part it's okay if you don't follow along, just follow along visually and do your best to understand. As long as you got the repo downloaded, we're all good. Follow along for this, and then for the second part, you'll get to do stuff like this on your own. But so we see that as it received the request for the default, for the root route right here, the first thing it does is it prints, we just got the home page to the console, right? But because it's a server, it prints to the node console or your computer's terminal. And then it decides, hey, I want to render or send back this HTML page, which is this, right? Right here. And then from within that HTML page is saying, the HTML says, hey, I need these other resources as well, which are these. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to colorize this message a little bit. First, let's put a little bit more space. So if you're unfamiliar, \n adds a new line. So if we do this, the difference is going to be See how there's new lines here and new lines here? That's because of the slash ends. So the first thing we want to do is let's colorize this message a little bit. It's kind of bland, it's hard to see. I want it to pop out at me that, hey, I just got the home page because I'm trying to debug something, for instance. Okay. So right now we're in the root of our package, of our library, or our project. And I want to colorize with this package called Chalk. So what Chalk is it's just an npm package. And it lets you do stuff like this. Colorize your terminal output. And it has a nice readme, which is all of this actually, and it says how to use it. So npm install -- save Chalk. So npm install, just like this, what it does is it installs all the packages that you have listed in your package.json, right? But when I do this, and then some name, some package name, here, this is just a placeholder, right? This is going to both install the specific package and do something nice, a little bit nice, which is put the package, list the package as a dependency in package.json, right? So let's try this and then examine package.json. Chalk. So first of all, we see that it fetched the Chalk library and then it installed it. So if we look at node modules, we see that we actually, okay, it's installed, right? So that's good. But the other thing that it did, right, as I said, is, oh look, we have a new dependency, Chalk. So that's a nice short way of both. If you don't add -- save, it will install the package, but it won't add it to your dependencies. And generally, for this class, if you're installing something and you're using it as part of your project, you're going to want to add it to your dependencies list. So, as an example, let's say that I installed Chalk, right? Let's say that I installed Chalk on my device, and I didn't use -- save. And I wrote some code as we're about to do, and it starts working. The problem is, when I push those changes and somebody else pulls, node modules isn't included in, generally it's bad practice to include node modules in your source code history. So like with Git. Git doesn't keep track of node modules, it just keeps track of package.json. So the problem is, I have Chalk installed, and I have code that needs Chalk to be installed. But then person 2 will say, Aaron, right, downloads our source code, and package.json has this list of dependencies, Express, cookie parser, whatever else, but it doesn't have Chalk. And so when he says npm install, he's not going to get Chalk installed. But the code that I wrote says, hey, Chalk needs to be installed. So he's going to get an error and be really confused. So whenever you do npm install, it's important so that the rest of your team can use the libraries that you install, that you use -- save. Like this. Okay. So now we can look at the documentation. First of all, we need to require Chalk. So let's go into routes and index. And up at the top is a good place to do requires. So we'll do var Chalk equals require Chalk. And we'll go down here and equals. So before we had like the home page, right? This would do exactly the same thing as before. But what Chalk does is it colorizes it. So we'll do cyan. The way that this works isn't super important. It adds some special characters so that your terminal knows to colorize it. But the idea is, that's not really that important. Just know that this is how we use Chalk based on its README, right? Its examples. You could also look at the documentation down here, the API. But for now, let's just try this. Let's see what happens. So let's restart, and then go to post, and there we go. This is the home page, and it's cyan now. And let's say if we wanted to add some new lines, and I don't like cyan. Let's do green. Restart. Okay, this is the home page. There we go. So chalk specifically, not really that important of a package. It's easy to use, it's nice. If you want to add color, go for it. But the point of this section is just seeing how to install an NPM package, seeing how to require it, how to go through the documentation and use a package. This is NPM's website. This is where you can go through and browse like really popular packages. A lot of these you won't necessarily need for this size of a project, for a project that you'll be using at this scale. But these are very popular packages. Specifically where we are, this is just the chalk package within NPM's website. All right, cool. So done with the second one. Third, let's remember down here we have the user list. Let's figure out where this is coming from. Because right now we're not actually using a database. We're using a janky in-memory database, and I'll show you what I mean. It's a database with very strong quotes. So it's actually, we're storing it in app.js. And the reason we're doing this is just for simplicity, because interacting with databases is kind of complex. It's not the worst thing in the world, but this is just much easier for the purpose of this explanation. So let's see. Okay, it's actually in here. Okay, yeah, here we go. So it's in route/index.js. And so what this is doing is, because this isn't in the scope of the function, this gets run one time whenever this file is read. So the way this actually works, not super important if you don't understand this, but whenever this file gets read, it creates this variable, it creates this function, it actually runs this function. Well, forget, this is the part that's important. Yeah. Anyways, the point is, this is where we're creating our database. And so we're reading in a variable called db. We're creating a variable called db, which is this object of keys and values. And so that's what we're reading here. So let's see. You see here, the route that we're at is /userlist. So let's search for /userlist. Oh, there we go, okay. So router.get /userlist, and this is getting the user list JSON. And as you can see, all we're doing is we're sending db, which is just a JavaScript object. So that's all we're doing. Updating db is just adding an entry to the object. Deleting or removing from db is just removing an entry from the object. Okay, so let's actually add an entry manually. Okay. Now, if I reload the page, will I show up? Will my fruit show up? Correct. I think. There it is. Because, right, we didn't restart the app. Because this was read in one time when we started the app. So if we restart it, there we go, and there I am. Okay, cool. So that's the in-memory database. All right, so now we're going to get the add a user form working. And if I screw up, I'm going to look at the solutions. And then, so what we're going to do is we're going to get the add user form working. And then we'll let you all work on these three parts, exercises on your own. The delete a user form is going to be very similar to adding a user to this step. The search for a user will be slightly different because you have to actually create the form HTML yourself. And then I'd like you all to build a new route that whenever you visit that route, it prints a random ASCII art cat to the terminal. And whenever you hear something that's like kind of crazy, like, oh, I don't want to have to actually create ASCII art cats, just search npm ASCII art cat, and it probably exists. And specifically, I said use the catman package, which is this one. But I'll let y'all figure that out. Someone literally spent the time to make this, and I'm so grateful. Okay, so let's add a user. So what we've got right here, everything on this terminal window right here is the HTML, or the view of our add user form. So it's this form right here. So you can see we've got a form with the name add user. The method is what we want to do when we submit the form, which is post to the route / add user, right? And so see how the method here corresponds to the method here that we're writing. So this is what we're looking at. This method corresponds to this method right here, router.post, right? And this route corresponds to this route right here. Okay. So then we have an unordered list. The first thing is a username. And then we have an input with type text, which is this. Placeholder is username, as you can see this right here. And the name of this field is going to be username, which will be important in a second. Then we have another point, favorite fruit, and then a similar input, which has the placeholder favorite fruit and the name user fruit. And then a submit button with the type submit. Okay, so what we're going to do is let's make sure that this is actually working first. Good sanity check. Okay, this is still working, good. And not implemented, but we see tried to add a user. Perfect. So that means we actually got to this location based on our correct form. We filled out, we created the form correctly. But we already created it, so that's not too interesting. So let's actually go ahead and, let's see, is it ref.body? Let's see. Let's try it. Oh no. It might be query. Yeah. We can look at that. Oh, that's the issue. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So it's rec.body. And we could actually look this up. Express documentation. Your best friend. rec.body. Perfect. Contains key value pairs of data submitted in the request body. Such as, in this case, we see that user name and user fruit have zero length strings, and that comes from this this input and this input because their names are username and user fruit, username and user fruit, username favorites. So notice that it's not called username and favorite fruit because this right here is the placeholder and this is the placeholder text, right? Username, favorite fruit, username, favorite fruit. The name of the input is username and user fruit, which show up here. So let's hopefully make more sense in a second. Let's actually print. Console.log. My username is rec.body.username. Console.log. My favorite fruit is user fruit. Okay, comment this out. And we'll put some of these so it's easier to read. Okay. Alright, so on the home page, we'll do a sign up form for who's not on the list. Alright, we'll do Eric. Alright, Eric's favorite fruit is going to be the green melon. And we'll submit. And it still says not implemented, right? But hey, we got my username is Eric and my favorite fruit is green melon. And that's coming from right here. Oops. From right here. So that's nice. That's exciting because that means we actually have the information that we need to make changes. So now all we need to do is, remember we need to update DB. But programmatically. So, we can do, how should we do this? We'll do db dot, db rec.body.username. And actually, we'll do this. And if you look here at this line, this is what's rendering this. And there's actually specifically an error view, an HTML page, or a handlebars/HTML page, which is just errors, for errors. So if we comment this out, we could do res.send implemented. If we restart, cool, it's currently being implemented. And we tried to add a user, so that's good. So now, question, is Eric going to show up when I click see user list? Yes or no? How many people think yes? How many people think no? Oh, it did. Okay, so what happened here? Well, this line we actually updated DB to with Eric's and his favorite fruit. So, and what's happening when we go to see user list, which is here, right? We're just sending DB, and because DB was updated here, we're going to see Eric and his favorite fruit when we go to see, user list. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. What's the issue with this though? It worked, but the user doesn't really know that it worked. If someone didn't understand the code, they'd be kind of confused. So there's two things we could do. One, we could have a success page that says, all right, you implemented this, or you added this user and their favorite fruit, and here's what you added, and click this button to go back to the home page. Or what you can do is redirect the user just straight back to the home page, so they hit submit, and then you just get a clean version of the home page. Generally, either one is fine. What you'll want to do when you redirect back to the home page is give some sort of information or indication as to whether the ad was successful. But for now, we're just going to do a redirect because it's easier and we don't have to create a new view. So what we'll do is res.redirect. I believe it's this. Could be wrong. Okay, there we go. So let's actually change Eric's favorite fruit to watermelon. So what happened is we tried to add a user, right? We see this console log, which means we were right here. Then we get his username and his fruit from the request's body. Then we update the database, and then we redirect, right? We redirect back to the home page, to our root page. So now we can go to the user list and we see that, okay, his fruit's been updated. So the functionality of this in terms of user experience, it's a little bit confusing because if you want to add a user that already exists, you're actually overriding their favorite fruit, right? So it would be better practice to actually check if a user is in your database, and then if so, don't send an error message. We're not going to do that now, but just something to think about. Okay, so what we just did is we had previously downloaded and gotten this starter app working. Then we figured out how to print to the console whenever we visit certain pages by adding console.logs within certain routes. And we're in routes/index.js right now. Then we learned how to download an npm package and put it to use, and we did that by colorizing our terminal output with chalk. Then we did a quick detour into seeing how we implemented a janky database with heavy quotes. And then we saw how to update a form to use a form to actually update some part of our database and some part of our information on our users. Now, what I'm going to ask each of y'all to do is try these exercises. As I said before, the first one is try deleting somebody from the database. And we already have a bit of the boilerplate for you right here. Right? Post delete user. And right now, we're just returning an error view. But do something different than that. Do something, actually delete the user, and then I would recommend redirecting back to the home page. Okay, cool. So if you have any questions or need help, definitely raise your hand and ask, because that's what we're here for. But yeah, so dive in. Two things. One, I'm going to go over a quick a quick walkthrough of the solutions. So 2 things with that. One, make sure that you yourself, without the solutions or with them off far to the side, can get this to work, because this is really important, and you're going to have a really rough time getting your web app to work if you don't at least get some part of this working, right? Second of all, if you're having a lot of issues, we have office hours tonight, so definitely come to office hours. We'll be able to answer a lot of questions. So first, let's do a quick walkthrough of deleting a user. Okay, so up here we see how we're adding a user, and down here what we want to do is basically the same thing except deleting it, right? So we're going to copy this down. And then things we're going to change are, instead of add, delete. Then we need to make sure that, so this is the delete user form right here. Method is post, action is delete user, and we have just a username. We don't have a user fruit anymore, so we can delete this. Alright, and so now this is still setting db username equals fruit. So what we're going to look up is JavaScript delete object element. How to remove an element from a JavaScript object. And it turns out that it's delete and then whatever it is. So I'm going to do delete db username. This, and we're going to redirect back to the root. Okay, so let's restart this. Check this out, and right now I'm still in the list, Hunter Strawberry, so let's delete me. Submit, and let's check, and I'm gone. Cool, so that worked, good. And we see tried to delete a user, and it didn't get deleted. Okay, so that's part 1. And if I'm going too fast, check out the solutions, come to office hours, but I want to make sure that we have time for the Ajax section. Okay, second, we want to be able to search for a new user. So right now the issue is the form is still sort of unimplemented, right? The user defined. So what we're going to do is just copy this over, this part of the form. And instead of unimplemented, we actually have something in a username, right? So what we had before was unimplemented here, which corresponded to unimplemented here. But now what we have is placeholder for, or as a username input and a submit button here. These two. Okay. So let's try that. Restart. And run start. Okay, good. So we have a username to find. David, submit. But the problem is we added the form side, right, the view side of things, but we didn't actually add the back end. So let's go update the route real quick. So we tried to post to find user, right? So now we're going to see router.post/find user. Oh, render not implemented here. Okay. So what we want to do instead is first we'll say favorite fruit equals db username, or actually rec.body.username, right? And then res.send, which is just sending a string, favorite. We'll actually say Okay, so let's try this. This is actually, now when we do this, it's going to, when we go to this route, /find user, it's going to pull in the username, find the favorite fruit in the database, and then send back a string including the favorite fruit. npm start, go back to the root of our web app, find David's favorite fruit, and don't know what happened here. Residents and oh, there we go. There we go. David's favorite fruit is apple. Cool. So obviously there's a lot of extra things you could add to this to make it look nicer. You could add a view. You could even have it just appear in the root of your app, the base of your app. But this works for now. This actually is functional. Okay, one last thing. We're going to really quickly add the cat.me route. So the first thing we need to do is pull up cat.me documentation. Okay, cool. So to install, they don't actually show how to install, but that's fine because we already know. We know the name is cat-me, so npm install, and don't forget, -- save. Don't forget, you'll have so many issues if you forget that part. Cat-me, that's the name of the package. Okay? Alright, so cat.me is installed. So now let's do routes / index. Okay, so let's add a new route. So router dot get cat. Okay, so that's it's a get request for the cat/cat route. An anonymous function, which is the callback. Res next. You don't actually have to put next here, but it's good practice too. And then, okay, so let's look at the documentation for cat.me. Var cat.me equals require cat-me. So we're going to go to the top because that's a good place to, that's always the best practice for requiring things. Var cat.me equals require cat-me. Okay, and then we're going to say var a cat equals cat.me call as a function. And then we're going to console.log say cat. Oops. Okay, let's try this. Okay, this is our home page. And if we go to cat, there we go, we have a cat printed. The reason there were 2 cats printed is because some browsers do browser prefetching. If you want to read about that, I put it in the workshop. But it's just a feature that Safari says, hey, I'm going to try and load the page early for you, but it kind of screws over developers if they don't understand what's going on. So basically just visit the page twice. But there we go. So we added a new package and a new route that prints cats for us. So that's exciting. All right, so don't forget. This is an important, all of the workshops are important, but this, if you can't get this, you need to do this workshop. Be on your own time on office hours, because if you don't understand what's happening right now, or to at least some degree, you're going to have a lot of trouble when you're building your own web app. But I believe in you guys, so yeah, do this in your spare time, come to office hours, we're here to help. And Ajax is next, so thanks for your time, and yeah, good luck in the next lecture.